Welcome to Film Study Podcast with Lexi. I'm Lexi. I'm sorry. The ending and the trailer of that episode was crazy. But welcome to Film Study Podcast. We talk all things all American here. And I have my friend NoCo on the pod. And I knew it was going to be a football heavy episode, which is why I have NoCo on the pod, because we are both Ravens fans. And that's how we know. And we know a thing or two about offensive coaching changes. How about that? How about that? So anyway, like, subscribe, share, all of that good stuff. Let's get into it. I've been saying this, but I want to say it again. I used to do like ratings, so like 1 out of 10, 10 being the best. But this season, because it's special and we're getting to the 100th episode, I'm doing letter grades. I wanted to switch it up a bit. So A, B, C, D, F. We haven't really done Fs, but A, B, C, D, F. What would you grade this and why?
Okay. That's okay. Let's see. I would probably give it a B minus C, somewhere around there. I'm saying based on the first 2 episodes, right? Because we're on episode 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Are we on 3?
Yes, 3. Next week is 4.
Because 1 and 2 really had me on the edge of like, okay, what are we doing? But this one kind of wasn't as bad. There were parts that kind of we'll talk about, but yeah, I might give it a B minus C.
Mine have been in the B minus range this whole time. I feel like there's been parts of episodes that I really loved, so it brought the grade up to like a B minus or a B or whatever the case may be. And it's so interesting because I don't know if the editor had a rough week or the director was trying to do something different because it's a long standing show. But I'm sorry, because we look at all of the elements of storytelling here on this podcast, this has never happened with All American, where I've seen so many just editing things to like tweak or like flubbed lines. There are a couple of like stutters, and it was just so noticeable to me because I've never seen that before. And as an actor and as like a storyteller person, whatever, I pay attention to those things. So it's pretty shocked. But the story and the plot, the performance is on point, I think.
Gotcha. So what is your rating?
A B, like a B minus.
Okay, it will be.
Yeah, but the B minus is because I've never seen so many like editing hiccups in an All American episode. Like it was almost just like a solid B plus. It was almost a B plus.
Okay,
but the minus is brought in because the editing things took me out of it a little bit. And that, like, hey, they're at like 90 something episodes now, so if that's my only criticism at editing. It's amazing that they've been able to reach this level of consistency. With that being said, I hope that the editing things get figured out for the next couple episodes, because listen, there's been some rumblings that this may be the last season. I don't think it will be. I think that they're going to get a 7th and final season, but there's just been rumblings. You just don't know. I know. I want a season 7. I think we need to see them as full adults, away from college, away from schooling period, and just see them be.
Yeah. And I don't like the idea of like, I hate when shows like when a big character goes away and then they only have one more season. Like
I didn't even think about that.
Only like relied on that one character. Like that's not true. Like, so I hope that does not happen.
Me too. I want a final 7th season, especially because 7 seasons is what I predicted way back when that this show would last, like in season 3. Yeah. So let's get into. We're holding out hope that they'll get renewed for maybe a final season for season 7. And let's get into it. Asher had a pretty brief storyline. I was personally happy about this because I think that we've been sort of over indexing, if I can say that, on the Asher storyline for the past couple of episodes. And I feel like other characters who are also main characters, their stories have sort of, it's been harder to
Mm,
follow the other main
right.
characters because we've gotten so much of Asher, and it was unexpected
Yes.
for me. I don't know what your I don't know. Do you have the same thoughts? Is that
No,
just
so
me?
it's no, 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 that's very true, but he had a baby and everybody loves kids, okay? They had to really
That's true.
develop that story, Lexi, and everyone loves kids, and so they had to allow
No,
you
listen, the
to
guest
have
I had on
and
my
you
friend
know what
Carmen last week, she was just like, I no. She was
and
not
you know
for it.
what's so funny about this though, that now you bring that up and now that we're talking about it, this usually happens when you have kids. Everyone cares all the way up into the pregnancy. Woo woo woo. And
Yeah.
then bye. Here's your story, your
Yes.
quick little short time in
Yeah.
the
Oh, we just
in
needed to
the
see the baby screaming once. And then we're just like, okay, we're good
that
on the
was
baby stories.
yeah, at the practice and I mean not the practice, at the coaches meeting and they said, "Yep, this is it. This is it for you."
Exactly. You said, and that's a wrap on the babies for season 6. I think they have twins playing AJ. So. No, we'll see.
Exactly.
We'll see the twins some more. Um, but so with that being said, actually getting into the storyline, Asher gets a check on his cardiomyopathy, which is his heart condition. The doc gives him
Mhm,
the all clear, but he quickly finds out that Coastal lost their QB1 to an Achilles
mhm,
tear. That's not fun.
not at
Um,
all.
and that puts additional pressure on the team, especially Montez, as
Mhm,
one of the only Latin coaches. And Asher later talks about it with Jordan, about the situation, and Jordan explains what they did at GAU, building up that program, maybe open practices, just thinking outside of the box. Then Asher brings Wade in. I don't know why. I don't know.
and you know what was funny? Like, the entire time, right? Because you're thinking, "Okay, they have to bring in a quarterback that we know is a quarterback,"
Yeah,
right? Because of the way they kept hinting at it throughout, and I'm like, "Okay, well," I'm
I
thinking,
was
"Well,
just
who
like,
can they bring?"
Chris, is Chris coming
Yeah,
back from the grave?
I was thinking of everybody but him. Like,
Yeah,
I was
no, same.
actually very, very shocked. I was like, "Hold up, what?"
My thing was delayed. Like what I was watching was delayed, so people were texting me. It was just like, "There's your guy," as a joke, but it's just like, "There's your guy," and I was just like, "Who is it, Chris?" And they were like, "No, it's Wade."
Yeah, that was actually very shocking.
Yeah,
I was very shocked, and I wonder how that's going to go.
yeah, yeah. We'll see, we'll see. I just hope that we don't spend a ton of time on. I know I've been sort of
Yes, that's
infamous for
exactly
saying
what
this,
was
but I just don't want to spend a ton of time on Coastal.
yeah, me either. That's not why we're here.
And then we're still
That's not
back
why
at we're still in Crenshaw. We're still in Crenshaw. Free us. Free us from those hallways. We've been seeing those hallways since season 1.
they're not going to.
I
That
know
is
they're
their
not going
bread
to. I
and
just had to
butter.
get out that rant.
That
I
is
just had
their
to get out that
bread
rant.
and
And then did you notice the
butter.
little Photoshop? I don't. Maybe it wasn't Photoshop, but it looked Photoshop to me. The picture of Spencer and Billy in the Crenshaw hallway, and I'm like,
They took that from a scene and they framed it and put it in
but
there.
okay,
Is
did
that
they
what
take it from a scene though? Because I don't know. It was because this was like Daniel Ezra had a different haircut in season 3 than the one that I saw. I'm like, that looks like they photoshopped like a Crenshaw jersey onto Daniel while he was at Beverly, or onto
really?
Spencer while he was at. So
They
it's like that
probably
haircut
did.
is not, it's not lining up. Like, why didn't you just get one from season
Yeah,
3?
you're right. They probably did, and they're probably really good at it. So that's
Well,
probably
I
what
noticed.
happened.
I don't know
I
if
did
that's.
notice that. I did notice the picture. I did notice it
But
was
I was just like,
photoshopped.
he looks too young to be where with the age that he
Where
was when they went to Crenshaw.
Shaw, right? Oh, that's a good
Anyway, that's
catch.
neither here nor there.
I'm
But
gonna have to rewatch that and look at that.
no, I know. And I'm saying all that, audience, don't come for me. I
Uh,
had issues with the stream, so I'm just going based off of my recollection, and we just watched the episode.
yes, we did.
But yeah, so that was that. We both don't necessarily know where this whole Wade thing is going.
Yeah.
But speaking of Crenshaw, one of the other storylines is that Preach wanted Spencer to mentor Dion, this up and coming wide receiver football player that attends Crenshaw High. And Dion is a regular high school student. I'd say he was one of the most realistic high school boys
Mm.
in the show I've
Eh,
ever seen. Just with the no, the no's and yes, the I don't have a favorites.
yes. Yes.
Just
Yes. I'm
very
dealing with
difficult.
one.
Yes,
Yes,
to
that's
get conversation
exactly
out
how they
of.
Yes. That was so spot on. Like all the I'm like I said, mm, I'm dealing with one, and that's all. Like that's all he says. Yes, no, mm-hmm. I did it. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I watched film. Did you practice? Yes. What did you work on? The normal. Like it's like,
The
okay,
normal,
all right.
the
Like
regular.
what are we do the regular. So you're so spot on when you said that was like perfect. Like that was just a perfect.
It just really was.
Yeah.
But Spencer invites him to GAU. He says maybe, but he ends up swinging by. Ends up seeing Spencer, having some frustrations, big frustrations at practice. We'll get into that in a second. And then Spencer comes back around to him, apologizes for his behavior, which I love that scene, and we'll get into it later. But
I did
apologizes
too.
for his
Mhm.
behavior, says it was unacceptable to both Dion as his guest and his teammates, like Spencer's teammates. And
Mhm.
so then Dion asked Spencer if he can stay and watch his game. And I thought that was sweet. I was not
Yeah.
expecting to enjoy the storyline as much as I ended up enjoying this storyline. It was a very, I think, nice way and believable way to bring back in Crenshaw into this current
Right.
story.
That's so true.
So
They did.
as much as I came from Crenshaw at the beginning of this, I enjoyed the
Yeah,
execution and the
no, that
story.
is true. I do love how they did that. You are right. That's why I kind of gave it like that B, because I do like when players go back, right? And they take
Hmm.
a child under their wing. And then I do, although I really didn't like the scene that we're going to talk about at practice, I do like that it helped show that he was human. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes kids miss that piece, right? And so the fact that Spencer did quote unquote spin the block and try to tell him, hey, look, take take responsibility for his actions and so forth. So I did overall like that scene. I did
Hmm.
like it, especially when you look at, I mean, who Spencer is to a lot of them, right? So I do like the way they handled that whole scene. And bringing Preach back. I mean, I haven't heard his name in a while, so it was just kind of good to give him his little cameo for a little bit, you know. So yeah, I did like that. I did like that.
Who said that's a seasoned rap on preach? I'm kidding. Stop kidding.
That's it.
He said that's it. I just laughed because you said yes. Bring preach back for this little scene, the cameo. You are using very specific words.
It was really short. Walk down this hallway, talk to him, and we
Yeah,
didn't see
no,
him
listen,
anymore.
again, I appreciated and I think it was a good length of time. I don't think that it
Mhm. Yes.
exceeded
Yeah.
what it needed to be, both this story and Asher's story.
Mhm.
I thought that it spent a good amount of airtime on it, with still sticking with the main couple of, like, the main three
Right.
storylines, which we'll get into.
Which one?
Jordan and Layla. Jordan and Layla at this wedding. You know, we ended last week on a very interesting note with him asking her to move in, and obviously she said
Mhm.
she wanted to wait, essentially, and it was
Mhm.
for her parents and everything like that. This time we get, Jordan sort of sending wedding stuff to Layla, like things on a checklist, things on a checklist, and she talks to him. She's says it explains for the maybe the what is it, the third, fourth time in the three three episodes that we've had, and she hasn't been the only one, by the way, to explain, Jordan, this wedding is 2 years away. We have time.
Jordan wants it now. He wants
He
it
wants
now.
it
Leave
now.
him
He does
alone.
want it
He
now.
wants it
He does.
now.
He was put it down, but she encourages him to live in the present and also enjoy that he's having his best season, which we'll talk about in a second. But she starts, riddling off stats,
His
right? Like
stats.
leading with 12 touchdowns. Mac has become the OC, starts listing off his completion percentages, completion numbers. I'm
Listen,
like,
that
okay,
in that moment,
girl.
I was like, "Ooh, I love this." You know how we are, Lexi. I'm
Yes,
like,
yes.
"Ooh, yes, girl, you are winning." I was so
Winning.
happy during that scene, and then
Yeah.
but
Well,
I
and here's the
love
thing.
that scene.
I love that she said, I track my artist streaming numbers, so why wouldn't I track my fiance's stats? I said,
Come through.
girl, because I was
Come
just like, because a
through.
lot of people will lie playing you, like, you don't, you don't care about this man. And that's far from the truth.
Exactly.
That's far from the
Exactly.
truth.
And so I'm so glad you brought that up because I was so glad that they did do that, right? Because
Yes,
I do
yes,
think that there's this idea that she's only wrapped up in her world and she only cares. But that's just how she operates, right? She
exactly.
thinks a different way. And so when she said it back, I was like, yes, girl, yes, yes, shut
Yes,
everybody up. I
yes,
absolutely loved that scene. Like
yes,
absolutely loved
yes,
it.
yes.
Yes.
And what I also loved about that scene, I'm glad that you took time to say that because
Mhm.
something that has been true and something that I said, I think last week, is that I'm totally okay because as writers, you want to create tension for your people. You want to challenge relationships that you feel like are good and nice, and like you're just like, all
Right.
right, well, what can we do to best this up? That's how you think as a writer, and so I'm very fine with that. All I said was their tension has to make sense for them as a couple, and one thing
Mhm.
that's been true is that Layla has been the most consistent supporter of Jordan
Mhm.
as a football player
Mhm.
of anyone on this show.
That's true.
Anyone on this show. And so I'm glad that even in the midst of their tension around
Drama.
the wedding planning,
Mhm.
that they still had time to, like you said, put in these lines that she's
Mhm.
keeping up. She
Right.
riddled off 5, 10 different box stats.
I didn't
The
know those
advanced stat.
stats.
I know the advanced stats.
I had no idea those were Jordan stats. I
We
said, "Hold up,
listen,
let me make a
listen.
note."
We go game to game. She was just like, "It's your highest completion percentage." I'm like, "Okay, girl."
Yes.
It reminded me of when Liv got the rookie stats on
Oh, yeah.
Spencer's socks as a,
Yeah.
I think it was
Yeah.
socks. I think it was
Yeah.
socks, but as a Christmas gift.
Yeah.
So it's
Yes.
one thing
We
people
love
cannot
that.
say is that they do not care about their bed. They
But
they
yeah.
love them. They my man, my man, my
Yeah.
man. That's
Yes, they will, and they will tell you a stat
exactly.
every chance they get. "My man put up
Exactly.
this."
Ew,
Okay?
come
Get it
on
right.
now. So I did enjoy that, but then after that sweet, and then she said, she said I'll arrange to meet with some of the wedding planners at the lounge later. Uh
Right.
which we know that later Jordan had an opportunity to um essentially zero in with Mac on the
Right.
changes that Mac is making to the offense as the new offensive coordinator, because they're still installing an offense. And as we know, installing an offense mid-season for a mid-season change, even though it was a first game, is still pretty tough because it's after training camp. Like you just have to learn a whole new sort of system. And it looks like they've changed from a wide receiver heavy sort of the offense going through
Mhm.
one player to spread offense with some QB running and all of that stuff, which is why I had you on this pod, because you know what I'm talking
Trust me.
about.
Yeah.
And just yeah, just more wrinkles into the offense. And Jordan said that he couldn't because of the wedding planning, and Max said, "Oh, what's going on there?" And he wasn't feeling the fact that Jordan was getting married, even if it was 2 years away. Because he's like, "Dude, are you gonna focus on football?"
And so I think sometimes coaches think that it's a distraction,
Oh,
especially
all the
during the
time.
season. Yeah, and so it was funny when I was hearing it on TV from like he was like, "Married your junior year? What are
Right.
we what are we doing?" When a lot of people, I'm not going to say a lot, but it is common for it to happen in college. People do get married while they
Yeah, I also think it's very common among specifically athletes that are,
Athletes.
you know, that are on
Mhm.
that cusp or on the bubble of turning pro. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of younger athletes that have aspirations for the NFL because
Right.
we follow it, that
Yeah.
eventually say, "Oh yeah, they come into the league with a wife."
Man.
I mean
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, as we already know Jordan gets comp to him, but Russell Wilson came into the league with a wife. Did he
Right.
not? Did he
Right.
not? So
Yeah.
it's that sort of thing where it's if you're an athlete and you're
Right.
on your way to becoming a professional athlete in whatever capacity, that you, even more so now I should say, with the NIL and everything that's going on, you feel secure, so you're gonna have that relationship and
Mhm.
it's gonna be serious a lot of the time. um
Right.
so I eventually thought that Jordan would be late, which I wasn't going to be happy about as I was watching the scene, because I thought
I
that he
did
was going to
too.
stay and talk to the
Yes.
coach, and then he
Yes.
didn't. And then
Yes.
he didn't. That's my
That is
couple,
so
man.
crazy that you
That's
think
one of my ships, bro. Like
that
I
is
love them
so
down.
crazy that you and I think it was the scene where they, like, zoomed in on his face and had him look like he was thinking about it, and I was like, "I hope he doesn't do it.
I
Don't do it.
literally texted
Don't do
somebody and said,
it."
"Jordan, no." Because the whole time I had been mentally preparing for Layla to be the one that dropped the ball, which she
Mm,
eventually did.
yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that they threw a couple curveballs at us, because I certainly did think that Jordan was gonna bail
Yeah.
out. And then I thought it again when Asher came to talk to him, and I said, "Oh, he doesn't stay for the coach, he
Yes.
stays for Asher." And then that didn't happen either. So there, Adrian, shout out to you. He was the writer of this episode, so shout out to you because you threw me for a couple curveballs that
He
I'm not
did.
used to. But so Jordan ends up keeping the plan. And he walks in
Mhm.
on, which is so funny because everybody's been making a big deal about this dance for the entire week. I never thought it was going to be anything serious, and it ended up being a 5-10
Second.
second dance that was
Mhm.
not, it was a very very short dance,
It
and
was
she
no
was very
booty
very
or nothing.
frustrated. Yeah, she was very frustrated right before that dance. She
Right.
didn't even want to dance.
Exactly, she didn't. It just was bad timing. Awful, that's all,
Bad
bad
timing, and she
timing.
was dealing with a very important order that I think got mixed up, a
Yes,
shipment for
exactly.
some, I'm assuming it was some alcohol that she was ordering, some bottles of alcohol or something that she was
Mhm.
ordering for the club. And it seemed like she had been on hold for quite a while, or trying to resolve the issue
Right.
for quite a while, when Ryan came over. So the thing with this is, as Jordan's entering, obviously it gets completely awkward right away. Ryan
Very awkward.
dips. Ryan dips and Ryan gets
Like,
out of there.
walks very quickly. He said,
Oh,
"Alright, see you."
I would too. Jordan's just a very tall guy. He's a football player. Like I wouldn't want to be dealing with that. Um, and what's interesting about this conversation is that Layla explains right away when Jordan talks about the "Where's the wedding planner?" She says,
Right.
"Oh, I'm sorry. I've been really overwhelmed and I've been dealing with things." Which is the first time we've heard her give a complete answer to why
Mm,
she hasn't been as invested in the wedding planning,
right.
aside
Mm,
from it's 2 years away. So I thought it
right.
was interesting that they had her give her that was her actual answer, was, "I've been really overwhelmed." And
Mhm.
obviously we know that Jordan was already frustrated because of everything else happening throughout the day and the practice, which we'll get to in a second. But so he, being very upset, obviously, says, um, I forget what the exact line was, but it was something about, um, "Oh, you've been feeling overwhelmed, or we weren't overwhelmed dancing." And
Right.
maybe, you can, maybe dancing will help you follow through on promises and actually care about your wedding planning. But I'll just let you get back to your busy day. I don't He ate that line up. I'm sorry, he ate it. For his perspective and what he walked into, he ate the line up. This is not what
Listen.
happened. It's not what happened, but he ate the line up from what he knows about the situation.
Exactly,
When he
exactly,
said, "I'll
and
let
so
you get back to your busy day," I said, "Oh,
oh,
okay. I can't even say nothing."
exactly. like, and I think what's so good about it is, like, whenever you can go back and recap All American, like, cause in the moment you're kind of pissed, right? It's like, all right, come on, can we stop with all the problems? But the reality is, people are gonna have these problems, and people are gonna throw shots like Jordan did. Cause I'm gonna be one
Yeah.
too. Oh, you was having a little
Exactly!
fun dancing.
And again, from what his vantage point was,
It
that's all
was.
he
That's
can
what it
do.
looked like. Yeah,
And
that's
on
what
top
it
of the
looked
fact that
like.
he said that she didn't have to get the wedding planner before all of this happened. And it
Exactly.
just, like you said earlier, it was just poor timing because at
It was
this point, Layla's actually being honest about where she's at,
yeah,
and Jordan was just having a very frustrating day. And this was
yeah.
just another thing on top of his frustrating day. So I really actually enjoyed
Oh,
this
I like the
argument.
clapback.
I loved it.
Yeah.
This discussion. I wouldn't even necessarily call it argument, but it was just like this
Yeah, he
discussion
had a
from
little
them.
clapback. It was a
Yeah,
little
he had a
clapback.
little clap
He
back
got
and
his one off. He got his
exactly
one
got
off
his one
and
off and walked away. Went back to say, "Oh, I can be
which,
with you,
by the
coach."
way, I think Jordan, and I'm no therapist, so I know people like to take people's words and then be like, "Oh, I'm no therapist." But I do think he is dealing with a lot, and what's keeping him from not crumbling is the thought of planning the wedding, right? Because it's
Yes.
the love aspect of it. And so I think, and that's why I think it was so important to him. Because I mean, think about that. We both said we thought Jordan would stay and he would be late and he would do that. But he
Yes.
literally shocked all of us. And like the wedding is his most important thing,
Yeah.
which is funny because remember, Jordan was going to marry, oh my
We don't
goodness.
talk about that here.
Okay. We are going to talk about it because it actually happened on All American. And what
Now
was her
you're gagging
name?
me. I love it. See,
I
only
can't think of
NoCo
her
can say
name.
only a couple people can clap back at me with this
And
on my
listen, I
part.
done forgot her name, so we don't know her name, so yeah. But
Simone.
Lexi does. Yeah, Simone. And so he really loved love. Like that's his thing. And like with his father dying and everything, it probably helps. Like he just wants to be in that. And she keeps saying, "Oh, I don't. I'm not ready. Nope, 2 years from now." Yeah. So it's hurting him. It's hurting
it,
him.
you know what? I wasn't going to bring up Simone because I had a point about Simone. But since you brought her up, now I'll talk about her. Or talk about that relationship rather, not about her
Hmm.
specifically. But I did think it was interesting just in Jordan's reactions because one of the things that I thought they were sort of going to have him regress in is that if you look at the first time around of when he had the engagement or the elopement
Oh,
or the,
right.
the
Yeah.
whole Vegas situation, and the marriage that came out of Vegas is that he chose to still hang out with his
Hmm.
team and still work on the offense when they had Coach Montez at
Yeah.
Beverly, and he chose to stay around with his teammates than go help
Be
Simone with,
with it.
I think it was
Right.
the baby at the time, and
Yeah.
talking to the
Hmm.
adopted family or whatever have you. And he yeah, he just didn't sort of prioritize that at the time. So I thought it was very interesting that they had him follow through because I was expecting the opposite. I said, "No, he ain't gonna do this again," and then he did it, and then he did it
He
because this is a
did.
different situation and it's a different
Situation.
Jordan, and it's a different, it's a completely
Completely
different
different
relationship,
relationship.
completely
Completely.
different, completely
Yeah.
different relationship.
Completely. I want
So
to throw that out there. I am way
yes,
more of a fan of this than anything else. They're probably one of my favorites on the show.
so to wrap up on this is Layla for again for the first time we saw her the inklings of her being, you know,
Honest. Yeah,
honest and
too.
upfront and communicating, because I think that this is the first time she's actually had a chance to process it for herself, is that, and she tells Ryan, even though don't get me started on that, man. But she tells Ryan that she doesn't know why she's feeling this way. She just
Mhm.
feels very blah. She just feels very
Mhm.
in the middle. She recognizes and acknowledges that she should be very excited. This is a day that everybody dreams about. And we also know that her mom's not here. This was something that
Right.
we just recently in Olivia's grief episode saw that they
Yeah.
said, she said, "I'm so excited for my mother to be a part of my wedding," and we
Yeah.
know that's not the case, and we also know that she struggles with major depression, and I know
Yes.
that she's taken medications in the past. I forgot that she had to take daily medication. I
Me
knew that she had to take
too.
medication. I forgot that she had to take daily medication.
Me too.
And she's explaining the effects of the daily medication and that she's just in a middle zone right now so that she doesn't get too high or
Exactly.
too low. It was I one of the saddest parts of this episode for me was when she said, "And my poor fiance is like, I don't know how to explain to
Yeah. So, and that's what was so like, so that whole scene with her and talking to Ryan, it really like, it like hurt, right? Because I mean,
It
like
did.
the part that you just brought up, because at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my goodness, have this conversation with Jordan, right? But it was good to see that she expressed that. I was kind of mad it was Ryan because I didn't like his advice.
Same, same.
I did not like it. He's not a doctor. Like, what are we doing?
Him
But
telling her to stop taking her medic. And the thing with this is it's dangerous at any level, at
any
any level,
level,
but especially at the late level that we have seen Layla
scene.
get to at her worst.
And
At
like,
her
I
worst,
know the
she it
purpose
wasn't just a random she had to go to rehab.
had.
She had to go to a mental health facility.
Yes. I did not like that advice. I know why they do it, right? I know why they have to put those kind of things in the episode. But
But
like,
I was not on my bingo card that he would encourage her to stop. And I
yeah. And so, but I did like that she was honest about it, and I hope that we do get to see that conversation with her and Jordan in a healthy way, because I do
yes.
think that on the show they're starting to be one of the favorites, right? And so, how do we allow them to have that conversation healthy without like how they are right now, right? They're both in a very interesting spot.
Yeah, and I you
Oh,
said favorites. Just thinking through. I'm just like I'm imagining me later on this week sometime when I'm getting comments that are just like, I don't like that she said that,
oh,
that Jordan
oh,
Layla
yeah,
is one of the
they takes
favorites.
everything she says and, like, flips it, which is so funny because, like you said, and I think that's why I'm so glad they did put this in the episode that
Oh,
people
me
forgot,
too,
like
because
I
they are a
that
healthy
she's on
couple.
med yeah, she's on medication, people, like, I mean,
She's
have
on
do you know what
medication.
that
They're
is?
a healthy
Like
couple.
like, what are we doing? Like, y'all are what are we doing?
It was executed beautifully, their
Yes,
storyline up
it
until this
was.
standpoint. Let me say this, I think that she was starting to explain to Jordan that she doesn't know why she felt this way, but they
Yeah.
she was just having a rough day and it was poor timing,
He was
poor
having a
timing.
rough day.
Yes.
It was just too much. Yeah.
So I'll take the poor
Mm.
timing, and that's the reason for their poor communication over just they're not communicating with each other because they
Right.
always have communicated with each other.
Communicated
And
with each other.
yeah, even when it's
Exactly.
hard, even when it's hard,
Exactly.
even when especially when it's hard. So
And they're each other's biggest supporter. So let's not
yes,
forget
it's
that.
still it's still it
And
was
that's
you can see
very
it in this
important, people.
episode.
Yes, it's
Yes.
very important.
Yes.
Mm.
So I kind of want to skip to Liv's story because I was gonna do it last,
Okay.
but we can do it now.
Hmm.
So she is doing. We already know that she's doing this bio on Billy. And she talks to Layla about it and says that she has her first interview, and the first interview is Grace, which I jokingly said would happen about the affair, and then it happened, and I said, "Oh, y'all ain't brushing things under the rug. Y'all ain't making stuff up anymore." Because I've been a very vocal advocate that we've sort of, you know, post Billy dying, we've had a different
Yeah.
recollection of some events, just a different one,
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
different, slightly different. We're remembering some
Yeah.
things about Billy that I didn't necessarily see in his character traits, but you know,
Yeah.
good coach, a father. So anyway, so basically Liv tells Layla that she's thinking it through, that she checked with her mom, everything's good for her to, go and talk to Grace, and that she's just dealing with this in a different way that she would have different
Oh,
projects in the
and
past.
I was gonna say, I just like that they highlighted that. See, it's good to
Yes.
highlight it because when you don't highlight it, then that's when you get the people in your comments trying to act like they're
Especially
the
for the women
same.
on this show. There's so many misogynistic,
Mhm.
I just have to call it
Yep.
out. There's so many misogynistic fans in this in
Mhm.
this in this audience, in this fan base, that always come for the women on this show for how they handle things, and even if they have valid
Mhm.
reasons, it's very frustrating. And so I do
Mhm.
love that they put these things in the dialogue to say
Mhm.
they are thinking about this, they are working on this, they are acknowledging they
Mhm.
are allowed to be human just like the
Men.
guys are allowed to be human. So yeah, I
Exactly.
could
I
go
love
on
that they
so many
cover.
rants about that. Yes, you know how I feel, but
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, I know we'll have talks.
we'll have talk.
Mm,
But so Grace then invites Denise to the conversation.
right.
And I don't, I mean, I get it, but Grace always got to shade Denise. And if you gonna
Yeah,
invite her, don't shade her to her face. I don't understand. Always got to have something underhanded to say. You know how I feel about this woman. Like, how you gonna invite her and then be like, oh yeah, stalker? Like, okay.
and Grace says stuff so gracefully though, so I don't know. It's so
I'm
cute.
glad.
It's just cute.
I'm glad you think it's cute.
I do. I think, and it's so funny because her name is Grace, and
Yes,
like, yeah, so
that
I
is
do think
funny.
it's
That is hilarious. The subtle shade.
yes.
But then and then Denise starts off with picture it, Crenshaw, and it was supposed to be like picture it, Sicily. Like, I don't even know where that's a reference from. I just understand that it is a reference.
Right, exactly. Oh my goodness.
Um, but basically, as they get into this interview, Liv brings up the affair in a just very random, unexpected way, a way that was, I think it was around the fact that it was, that Billy and Grace had a lot of love for each other.
Mhm.
Their thought their love would stand the test of time, XYZ. And Liv says, I
Mm.
know, that's why you had an affair, something like that. And not even thinking about it, it
Right.
just came out of nowhere, and she
Mhm.
acknowledges that. So she apologizes, rushes out. She actually has a conversation with Layla where she brings it up, and they talk about just that, how unexpected that trigger was for her. But when you go
Mhm.
digging around in the past and it's not something that you've dealt with yet, that it can be very challenging to talk about and
Mhm.
to discuss, and brings up something that you didn't expect. And so
Right.
Liv explains all that with Grace. Grace obviously graciously, there you go. I'm giving Grace her
Yes.
props. Graciously accepts, even though she doesn't apologize, but
Mm.
graciously, accepts what Liv was saying, and basically says she doesn't have to feel bad about it, which I loved. Um,
And did you see the graceful hand that she placed
yes,
on Liv?
yes, that was
Uh,
sweet. It was sweet. We love it. Future mother-in-law, future daughter-in-law moment.
yeah.
And
Oh,
Liv asked a
you
question.
know what I just thought about? And I'm sorry to
What?
cut you
No, go
off.
ahead.
Like, that's your future mother-in-law. I would
Yeah.
never. Oh, that changes the whole dynamic. But anyway, keep going.
Oh!
I didn't even think about
She
that.
listen, it wasn't she wasn't aware of it. It was an
Yeah,
unconscious
I know,
action.
I know,
It
I
was a
know. But
Freudian slip.
oh my,
It was a Freudian slip.
imagine
Um,
saying that to your mother-in-law. Just
I
crazy.
know.
Okay.
I know. I know. But Liv does ask about the affair for the first time. And the
Mhm.
reason why I loved that she said it, even if it was crazy, is because I'm a person who I did not think, certainly not in season 6, episode 3 of season 6, that we would finally get acknowledgement of how the twins, obviously this was Olivia, but I'm using it
Mhm.
for the both of them, but the twins were affected by that affair on Grace's part. I think that we
Right.
saw a lot of Billy dealing with the after effects of that, and not so much on Grace's part, just with the people
Mhm.
in Beverly. Um,
Right.
and so I was glad, even though it took X many seasons, I'm so glad that they finally gave space for this moment for Liv
Mhm.
to acknowledge, yes, I was impacted by your actions. Because
Right.
Grace be up in
Yeah.
their house all the time. Like, Grace be up in their house all the time. And if it was me,
That's all I used to say is like, "Man, these people better than me." Cause
Laura is better than me.
she is so
And
much better. The fact that she gave permission for that to be the first person you interview, I'm like,
yes,
"Hold up, what are we
yes.
doing?"
Still, and that's my point.
Yeah, and, like,
Yeah.
that could be hard because, like you said, I mean, this my daughter-in-law trying to check me. like if you put those types of things into
Yeah.
perspective. But I do like that they are showing that Liv is evolving, right? And
Yes.
so I do like, right, that even to bring in this Liv situation when her and Layla kind of had that conversation and she asked Layla, well, what made you want to keep digging, right? And it was saying that our parents are still human. And I think
Yes.
that line right there was
That
so
is what
important.
college is all about, I
Ouch.
think, or
But
that age
yeah.
group is all about is because I don't know about you, but when I turned, the age, 20, 21, around that
Mhm.
age, and you start to realize, oh, my parent or parents are a human being. Like, my parent is a fully formed human being
Right.
that is not perfect, like my family is not perfect. Like, for me, it extended from my family. I
Right.
came to this realization that,
Exactly.
oh, the adults in my life, they are not perfect, they have
Right.
flaws. And as I'm coming to be an adult, I'm realizing the way that I view the world and the way that that might not line up with how I view the world as a kid, because I have my own fully formed thoughts now, and I can recognize that for my parents, which is
Exactly.
why I love that line.
Yeah, it was so important, and I really hope a lot of parents watched it too, and, like, because I
Yes.
think it's good for parents to also show their children that they are human,
Human
right? Not
beings,
just
yeah.
that the children kinda find this out once they're no longer here and they find out all these things about you, but show that human side to you, because if not, they always put you on this pedestal, and
Pedestal,
then they
yep.
do have these moments where the moment the affair happens and all this, then they don't know how to deal
Yeah.
somewhat with those feelings. And so I loved that scene to
Yes,
kind of bring
it's
that whole thing to make sure Liv continued to be comfortable asking these questions and saying, "Hey, I'm just trying to understand." I absolutely loved it. I
and
liked it.
giving grace to your parents,
We're
giving
gonna
grace
throw
to
that word
the
grace.
adults, yeah, the adults in your
Mhm.
life, because they are human. And knowing that it's okay, like, it's okay to recognize, I don't necessarily agree with,
Yes.
for my family, I don't necessarily
Yes.
agree, like, the way that, like, my this one person in my family thinks about this, but I can still have love for them, and I can
For
still
them.
acknowledge that they're a person and have
Yes.
grace and show love,
Yes.
while also disagreeing, or with also thinking in a different way. So yeah, I loved that. And it
Mm.
reminded me of early All American in the sense that it made you think and say, like, yes, this is
Yes.
true. This is
Yes.
hard.
Yes. Exactly. Yes.
So I love that you brought that up. And I just love that Layla and Liv got those conversations, because I've been begging. I've been begging. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna leave it at that. But then Grace realizes later, after Spencer comes and talks to her
Mhm.
about his day, that she hadn't processed Billy's death. I also love that she again reiterated that what Liv said wasn't disrespectful.
Right.
Um, which,
Yeah. So I do like that they're showing, I mean, it's such in a weird way, and so I wonder how they're gonna, or if this is just all we're gonna see of it and it kind of just
I
ends.
think this is probably
Um,
all we're gonna see.
because I think that it is good to address it. I mean, because it was such a weird situation.
Yeah.
What I think is funny though, and maybe I just forgot, what happened to Homeboy? Did he go work somewhere else again? Like, cause where's your husband? Like,
Why have they not been addressing her husband? But I'm so
okay.
if they're gonna ignore it, I am too. Is how I guess how I'm
Okay,
dealing with
because I
this,
did say I
because
think that was all weird, because
but
then it
remember,
was like,
she
okay,
decided to move back for
right,
Spencer,
okay,
and then
yeah,
they decided that Carter was gonna be the one flying back and forth, but we just haven't seen him.
okay, yeah.
Or his
I'm
daughter.
just
Where is his daughter?
like, it's like, are you crying with him on the phone at night? I'm sure you're
Exact
not.
and
Yeah.
okay. I even though we had that lovely conversation a second ago about how parents are people too and adults are people too, I still cannot believe that. I mean, I was just floored, but also not floored, that when Spencer entered and was explaining his rough day, because he did have a very rough day, that
Mhm.
immediately Grace is like, obviously he noticed that she was crying, but then it
Yeah.
immediately shifted to, yeah, I know that you've had a long day, and I just realized that I haven't grieved Billy. Like, I was like, did you just make this
She
about
was
you?
Yeah, she did. She said, "I can't. Your girlfriend came in here. She talked about me."
Literally, I don't even think he
That's
asked at first. She's just like, she just went straight for, like, head over heels. I said, like mother, like son.
because
Am I
Spencer,
lying?
man,
Am I lying though?
that's what I was getting ready to say. Because Spencer, but that's so funny though, because usually boys who are with their moms, I mean, that's what they're seeing. So that's a good point. Because see now, Lexi, I don't like that you told me that, because now I'm going to look at Grace totally different.
You know I'm always gonna come for Grace. You know I'm always gonna come for
Yes, now I'm
Grace.
gonna be watching every
Even though she
episode
had a
like,
couple good moments. She had a couple good moments in this episode, I will acknowledge.
yeah,
But
the hand
that was
placement.
that was Spencer and Grace, and then at the end, like there's this adorable moment between Spencer and Olivia where, because the eventual answer to Liv's question about the affair and why it happened was, Grace said that it wasn't about us being in love with each other, it was because we didn't deal with our pain.
Mm, yep.
And so Spencer or Liv comes back to Spencer at the end of the night and says, like, promise me that we will always,
I love that.
essentially, yeah, deal with our pain. Can we promise that we'll always address our pain and make it their
I
cute pinky
love,
kiss?
yes,
And I just loved it because this is what I've been wanting to see from them.
healthy
Just normal
relationships,
conversations.
conversations. Yes, and
Yes.
showing that, hey, I don't know. It's like she didn't really want to go deep into it. She just said, "Hey, look, can we just promise we won't do this?" Right? Like,
Exactly.
I don't
And
need
it
to
wasn't
tell you
about
all
their
the details.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't bring up.
Yes.
I don't need to tell you all the details because that was such a sore spot for how you're lying to. Oh, I
Yeah.
thought we were going to be honest with it, and
Yes.
it was just. Honestly, I need to give Spencer his props for that one, because the fact that he said, even though he had already heard from Grace, but the
Yeah.
fact that even though he didn't say I don't need to hear all the details, but the fact that he didn't ask,
Thanks.
share more,
Yes.
tell me more
Yes.
about this, and what is your deepest thoughts about this, even if
Yes.
you don't
Yes.
know them yet. But it was just that he accepted her saying, hey, just
Yep.
I thought about this with your
And that's
mom,
so
and
bad
just
because we're
promise
so
me.
triggered. We're so triggered because I immediately thought that's what he was going to do. And then when he didn't, I was like,
But that's what I'm saying. So I just give Spencer his props.
yeah.
I give Spencer his tens for
That was the
that,
only
because
props he gets.
no, I mean, I know I gave him his props earlier too. I think that he
Oh,
came
with,
out at the end of this episode and
yeah.
really, I think, course corrected from where we saw him in the beginning of this episode.
I'm
And
so sick of
again, it was
Spencer.
the things that he didn't say in that conversation with Liv that I
Yes.
appreciated as much as the
Yes.
things that he did in reassuring her that yes, we will always address our pain. So I love
Yeah.
that
That
from
was
them.
such a
And
cute
again,
scene.
it's what I've been wanting to see. It's what I've been wanting to see from them. Um,
Mm.
now we're gonna get to the final storyline with hey, business is business and football is football. I was very vocal, I should say, last week about it not making sense that people were telling Spencer not to care about his team for
Hmm.
professional football. And I said, even in professional football, it is about your team. So that's how I felt about it. And I think that you play for your contract, for your family, and for yourself, obviously.
Right.
But I still
Right.
do think that you play the game for your team. So I bring that perspective uh to this
Episodes.
conversation, I should say, yes, and to these episodes. But Spencer is very worried about getting the ball. He has this meeting with Coop and potential agents. I don't know why Coop is in this, because she is not certified in any way to be an agent.
She
It is
knows legal
only
advice.
she's
She
she's
knows the
only
legal.
been in law class for like a year and a half. She's and this is pre-law, mind you. She's not even in actual law school. She's in pre-law. And I think that she was taking one course. Is she even enrolled full time at GAU? So that's neither here nor there. But Coop was in these meetings with the agents, giving Spencer the yes or no on one of the agents. And one of the agents essentially talked to Spencer about the fact that his stats are declining and the offense is changing a little bit. Yes, now the offense is changing, that Mac has taken over. It did not change in the last episode. He was
Right.
just spreading out the ball. I had to specify that because people were like, how are they changing? I'm like, you can't change an offense mid game. You can't
Right.
change an offense mid game. But
Never
now the
works.
offense is actually changing. They're installing new plays. Um, and his Spencer's stats are suffering. But anyway, Spencer gets really frustrated in this one practice that they have, and he sort of demands the ball, and he goes over to defense. Now, it cut off a little bit for me during this whole period of time. So I'm assuming that after he came to Kenny about, hey, can you, I'm sort of not getting the ball, then maybe he goes over to Kenny again and asks if he can try defense for a practice.
Yeah, so they started like beefing, him and Jordan. And like for me, he was yelling at Jordan about like, you won't give me the ball, you won't give me the ball. The coach kind of comes over and like he said, I'm calling the plays coach gives me. Like, what do you want me to do? And then that's kind of when he asks to get on defense. And
Mm,
originally the head coach says no, but then the offensive coordinator is saying, well, yeah, we're playing a good corner. This next week, it would be good to go against somebody that's good playing defense. So basically, Jordan could get the practice. But see, this is where like, it was like, oh, and it's like, I'm on both sides of it, right?
mhm.
Because I do think about, right? And this is some Ravens talk I'm about to throw in because she, of
Go
course,
please, because I was going to do the
um,
same thing.
but okay, so like Lamar, one thing Lamar is going to do is look out for his homie. He gonna get his homie the
Yeah,
ball, right? He's
yeah.
gonna give his homie the ball, especially if he knows he's good. I remember, and let's just say at the time, he's gonna go to Hollywood, and I used to be like, oh, he's gonna get on the ball, like that's literally what
Hmm.
he's gonna do. And so this idea that Jordan isn't trying to get Spencer the ball, I could see where Spencer's coming from that
Right.
point of view. I don't think his approach is per se good because Spencer has always come out to be very selfish. That it's
Hmm.
like, you just want the ball. Like, what are we
Yeah.
saying? But I do think that when we're talking about the game of football, right? That's usually what a quarterback's going to do. A lot of people know the name Patrick Mahomes, right? He's going to get the ball to his guy,
Travis
right? No
Kelsey,
matter,
or at the
yeah,
time, like
yeah,
Tyreek Hill. Yeah.
Michelle, yeah, he's going to like give it. And so to me it was just funny. And then it's like also, right, so and the reason why I did put Hollywood in the notes because Lamar wanted Hollywood to get the numbers, right? Because he
Hmm.
knows if he gets the numbers, he gets the pay, he gets this, he gets that. And that's what you do to your friend, right? That's how
Yeah.
you help
Yeah.
out your friend. And so for me it's like Jordan is trying to act like Spencer's the only selfish one in this, but they've always played this tit for tat, right?
Yeah.
It's always
Yeah.
been the most unhealthy bro thing I've
And it's
ever
so
seen.
weird because they
Yeah.
rely on each other so much as a QB and wide receiver tandem. And
Yeah.
it's, I don't know if you thought this way too, but it reminded me almost of, is Mac even letting, you have some QBs have more control over their offense and audibles
Mhm.
than others, right? You have like your Lamar Jacksons, who now has a lot of control over the offense, versus a Brock Purdy, who it might be more of a point and sort of shoot, get
Mhm.
this to this target, no matter what. And so I was wondering if Mac is actually telling him, okay, this needs to go to.
Mm.
It felt like Mac is running a very rhythm
Yeah.
offense type of offense, even if it is more run heavy. Even like Monken, we're getting deep into the Ravens right now, but it felt like Mac has a very rhythm based offense and that
Mhm.
he's very particular about which receiver should get the
Receiver who
ball.
yep.
So I wasn't sure if Jordan was, again, like, oh, I'm purposefully ignoring Spencer, or if it was legitimately like Mac was like, I want this receiver to get the ball, I want this
Mhm.
receiver to get the ball, I want this receiver to get the ball.
No, I think
Um,
you bring up a good point, and I think that is kind of what's going on. I think Spencer is just thinking, okay, like we know you go through your reads. Do you go through your read and give me the ball? Just give me the
Yeah,
ball.
and
Yeah.
so my thought was, what does Mac have against Spencer, that Spencer is
Yes.
not the number
Not
one read,
number
even
one
though
read.
he's the star player?
Yes. Yes, and
Because
that's the story that
anybody,
needs to evolve, right? And I think that's where we're gonna go.
exactly. Yes,
Because
yes.
who
And
is
so and I
coming
do think it's a
to
little bit of Jordan just not passing him the ball. Like there was a, yeah, like you could have thrown him the
yeah,
ball a little
you
bit,
could
Jordan. Like
when he was like the short route, he could have easily
the
just given
short route,
him
and he chose the deep route. Like that is something Lamar would do, by the way, if someone's like wide open to the short route. Nah, F it, I'm gonna throw the deep route. Like,
exactly.
so it is, let me not say that it's not at all on Jordan. I do think that everybody has a part to play in this,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I think
exactly.
that Mac's part is being sort of underlooked at, and saying, who is the primary read on these
Mhm,
routes, and what
mm,
does Mac have against Spencer that he's not making
mhm.
Spencer the primary read on
Yeah,
these routes?
I agree with
Because
that,
he
yeah.
is your star
Mhm.
player.
Yeah.
But also Jordan, to your point, Jordan, that's your homie. You need to get him the ball, and he's your
Give him
star
the
player.
ball. I don't care
Like,
what the coach said. That's kind
listen,
of what
listen.
Spencer said. He said, "I don't care what you call it. Throw me the
Yeah, and
ball."
it right talking about, and that's why he picked him off because business is business, right? I'm him. I'm him. It's did it not remind you? Did it remind out the Patrick Mahomes video where he's like, "I'm here." Have you seen that? I'm here.
Yeah, listen, I do not like that saying personally. So the
Neither do
fact that
I. Neither do
Spencer
I.
like went off on it, it was actually
So
very
cringe.
like it was so cringy. But what I like, sometimes I like consistency because one thing I don't like, and this is props, and I always forget his name to the head coach, that he treats all the players the same. Spencer, get off my field. I don't care.
Mm.
However you're doing, get off the field. You're
You
acting up.
like Kenny as a kid? I do not like Kenny as
No,
a
no,
head.
I
I do
like
not think that
that
he's
he holds everybody like, 'cause
accountable.
he's
Yeah.
yeah, some head coaches would allow that because it's passion, right?
Hmm.
But what you want out of your players, and I don't wanna say you don't want that, but when you allow it to get like it got with Spencer in that moment, it gets dangerous, right? It gets
Yeah.
extremely dangerous, and so I like that he told Spencer to get off the field because Spencer, you need to get yourself together. Get off the field. Because see, if
Yeah.
you do that, now those other players that are not as good as you and I let you get away with that, they're gonna think that man, this coach don't really care. And
Yeah.
so I that's the only thing I like about him. Let
I
me throw that
do,
out.
but I just think that it always takes a long time. Why was his decision overridden anyway to have Spencer play defense? He just doesn't seem to have a grip on his team, and
Mm,
I don't like that. Like it, even the
John
fact that he obviously that I compared him to John last week, and I because he is at this point he was a wide receiver coach. I know he's not calling plays for the defense. He's not a defensive minded coach. He's the offensive coach, and then his offensive responsibility got taken away because he doesn't know how to call offense. So anyway, don't get me
Y'all
on a
don't
rant.
know our pain. Y'all don't know our pain.
But so it's that sort of a thing where Kenny is a locker room guy, and most of the
Yes,
time I don't
that's him.
even think he's good at being a locker room guy.
Yeah, I do think that you bring up an interesting point of okay, what is this beef with Spencer and like where did it come from? Who are you? Why?
For Mac, yeah.
Like, why don't you want him to get the ball? I mean, because it also helps the university, right? If Spencer starts getting the ball, more media attraction because now he is like it's just it's
And
weird.
I will give that to Kenny that he did recognize that in the beginning, but I don't know
Hmm.
what Mac's agenda is with maybe
Yeah.
it's just proving that he can build GAU even greater, even if he's not using the star player. But I just thought it was very
Mm.
interesting. It's almost like and people somebody I said this to somebody earlier, but I said it reminds me of the Stephon Diggs situation. Um, because
Ooh.
remember, and actually, I don't
Ooh.
even think it's a little bit different because the Bills' offense wasn't as good when they stopped
Yes.
utilizing him, but it just felt like it was better. And I think
Yeah.
in this case, GAU's offense might actually be better, but
Mm.
it's the same sort of thing where an offensive coach comes in, changes the scheme a little bit, and then the star wide receiver doesn't get the stats that they're used to.
Too. Yeah. And we know that.
And maybe I'll come around to Kenny. Maybe I'll come around to Kenny.
No, I don't think she will. Kenny probably won't be there long. The
I
way
didn't
they
want
keep
Kenny to get the job anyway. So, but listen, I love the actor though. I love the actor. I think he's so good. Um,
yeah, he's
but
good.
long story short, Spencer has a conversation with Coop after this frustrating practice, where vents out his frustrations. And honestly, I wasn't mad about it because I was just like, this is who you should be venting out your frustrations to. Vent out your frustrations to Coop. Go on the long rant like that. I just let Deion down, and I don't know why I acted like
Yeah.
that at practice or whatever. And Coop is there to remind him nothing should ever come easy. And I'm glad that he also acknowledged that Coop also changed her address and that she doesn't live in Kershaw anymore. Because I think that's been under talked about as well. So I'm just people were addressing things for me in this episode that I needed them to address.
They
That I needed
were.
them to
They
address, even
were.
if it was in passing. So
They
they
were.
had a good conversation, I think.
I agree. I agree. And I was saying, like, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably like just want to throw this out there. I'm
Hmm.
probably more at like a 85, so like a B. Like I remember I was on the
I know,
fence
now
like
that
a
we're
B
actually
to
talking
C.
about it, I'm like, this
Now
is
we're talking about
actually,
it.
it might be a B plus. It was still, but the editing.
There she go.
But it's still, you're right. It's a B. It's a solid B. But
Yeah.
the writing and the story, B plus for me.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so Coop tells him basically like things aren't gonna come easy, and that gives him, that needed, okay, putting things into perspective. And
Mhm.
later on, actually, Coop also explains that the guy, I don't remember his name, but the guy who's the agent's
Okay.
assistant,
Right.
um came and watched him at practice because Spencer had
Right.
mentioned it, and she said, he's actually rooting for you in your corner.
Right.
And he later comes by the house and, gives Spencer his props again and says, I saw a passionate player. And that's what an agent is for. And I love that. And he said, I
Yeah.
saw a passionate player on that field. Your stats speak for themselves. And Spencer decides to make his, decision that this man, I got to figure out his name, is going to be his agent once he becomes a full agent and once Spencer is eligible to sign.
Mhm.
To sign with an agency for the draft. So it was a
Yeah.
good episode. A lot, we actually got a lot of stories moved forward, which I'm happy about because
Yeah.
I was wondering, we were like, okay, when we gonna get into the stories? We're scratching the surface, but when we gonna get into them, and I think that we finally are.
Right. And I think that sometimes, so that's why I'm glad like we're talking through it. Because it does, like, you have to remember that like they're young adults,
Yeah,
right? And we're watching an hour of like a whole couple of days, right?
yeah.
So how do we, and I think this episode might have been just one day. I think maybe two,
I think it was,
but
yeah.
yeah, but it wasn't like a long, and so they're doing it in an hour, right? So I mean, a lot of you guys don't even think like logically, right? So when
No,
they're
I
in
know, yeah.
these stressful situations, is like, oh look, and I do like how they're showing that the characters are evolving, except for your one homegirl, but for the most part, you know what homegirl I'm talking about.
You're talking about the op Coop.
Yes. But that they're showing like different ways they're growing,
I
you know.
agree. I agree with what you said. Um, yeah. So that was the
Yeah,
episode.
I think
That
we're
was the
headed in a
episode.
good direction.
Me too.
Yes,
Me too.
as long as they don't throw
Um,
us a curveball next.
no, I know. I know. Thanks for listening to our review of episode 603, Business is Business. And stay tuned for our predictions.